Hello and welcome to Business Life. Coming up, IMF projects Ghana's debt-to-GDP ratio to increase further to reach almost 84% by end of this year. We are live in Washington, D.C. Plus, get you an analysis from an economist on the progress made so far in our pursuit of economic recovery at the ongoing spring meetings. Also in this bulletin, Development Bank Ghana to advance up to 1 billion cedis to commercial banks, with agriculture set to take about half of this funding.
A billion CDs already in our short time, and then also trying to change behaviors. Because one of the strengths of a development bank, with our links into government, our links into business, and our links into the private sector.
Plus, new report by Ghana Statistical Service shows substantial variations in some selected basic food items across the country, as the Western North region is seen as the most expensive.
Focus on the median price of the 10 items across the 16 regions. The reference period is February 2024 prices. So what we can only do is to proceed and do a comparison of the prices in February 2024.
We shall be discussing this revelation shortly. We have details of these and many others lined up for you. Please stay. Thanks so much for your company. I am Pius Kojobaka. Straight to our very first story. The International Monetary Fund is projecting that Ghana's debt-to-GDP ratio would reach almost 84% by the end of this year. This was captured in the latest fiscal monitor report released on the sidelines of the IMF World Bank spring meetings currently ongoing. Let's get on Zoom and go live to Washington, D.C. and speak to our man monitoring events for us, George Biafe from Washington, D.C. George, thanks so much for speaking to us on Business Live. First of all, help me understand this whole debt dynamics and the debt to GDP ratio we are learning.
Well, basically, it has been a mechanism that the IMF and the World Bank uses to measure your debts in terms of how sustainable it is. And some will want to look at even instances where there have been thresholds. So, for instance, if you cross the 70% threshold, then some would argue that they are getting to levels that are said to be not good for the economy or country. So it is more of a tool to measure how sustainable your debt are as a country. And therefore, if you go beyond that threshold, it actually requires some actions to be taken. As we speak right now, the IMF and the World Bank have classified Ghana's debt as unsustainable. And that is what, if I should break it down for us to appreciate, that's what we are talking about here, Pius.
So does it mean that the debt, which currently stands at 610 billion cedis, will be going up further?
Pius, again, a caveat in this report that the IMF issued was that their projections did not factor the debt restructure. And that is very important that we should place that on record. Several dynamics come to play in these debt issues. It might not necessarily mean that these are fresh borrowings being made by government. But also, it could also mean that when it comes to city depreciation, that is impacting on the debt dynamics, and that could also balloon the debt. It could also mean that the economy is not expanding that much to accommodate the debt, because if your economy is expanding that much, that could lower your debt in relation to the size of the economy. So again, these are just projections. It could not necessarily mean that the numbers are going up, and therefore we should be worried, Pius.
And Ghana's debt is being restructured as we speak. So why is it still going up? I'm wondering.
That's why I was trying to explain, Pius, earlier that it could not necessarily be that because of fresh borrowings, but also could be that if the city is not doing that well or it is depreciating, that could factor into the debts. Don't forget that, Pius, even though we are not going onto the commercial market, we are seeing some level of borrowings from the World Bank and the IMF, and that feeds into the debt situation. Also, don't forget that government has been issuing treasury bills as well, and that is also feeding into the situation. Even though some way would have argued that the IMF could have factored the debt negotiations or discussions that are going on, and that could have lowered it. As we speak right now, it's about 72, and if it's going to hit about 86, the scenario here is that either the restructuring that we are looking forward to, it's impacting strongly on the debt numbers, might have worked out as expected, Pius.
Quickly, George, fill us in with the latest ongoing negotiations with commercial creditors. What more are we learning?
So, Pius, what we understand that with respect to the bilateral creditors, it appears that the much talked about MOU. Now, what we reached in January was an agreement in principle. It appears that the terms for putting together the MOU has been agreed by all the members. So, in the coming days or even hours, the official creditor committee would issue that MOU in terms of how that 5.4 billion debts have been restructured in terms of the terms. On the commercial creditors, we also understand that there have been some renegotiations going on to rework the terms. There was a meeting yesterday. There have been some meetings with the IMF and all these creditors. And it looks like before government leaves was easy, they can also reach an agreement in principle on how to restructure the about 13 billion debt all these commercial creditors.
Very well. Thank you very much, George Yafe, live from Washington, D.C. Let's get on to Zoom as well and engage economist Professor Lord Mensah on the back of this. And Professor Mensah, you heard my colleague George Yafe bringing in us that developing story that, well, the creditor committee has arrived at an MOU. Really, your quick thoughts?
Yeah, that's a good sign. I mean, having an MOU, gives more or less kind of confidence that there's something on paper that we can rely on. Having an agreement in principle and verbally usually, can change at any point in time. But if you have it on paper and it's agreed by two parties, then obviously we should expect that they will go by the dictate of the MOU. And so from where I sit, it's a good sign, I would say.
All right, so a major hurdle now crossed now. So is that to say that this will then give way for the $360 million from the International Monetary Fund?
Well, when it comes to our external debt, we need to appreciate the breakdown of the external debt. Bilateral debt takes about 3.4% of the entire, external debt. We're looking at commercial debt as well, and that one we have not come to any agreement yet. And I'm wondering when we can come to an agreement with external creditors, commercial external creditors who have, their investment with us. So I would say that there's more to do, when it comes to our external debt negotiations. For the 360, million, I think we have a leverage in terms of negotiating with our, commercial creditor, because the first staff level agreement, it gives us kind of advantage in a way, sends a good signal to the investor community that at least we are doing well in terms of the numbers. But then sometimes we seem to ride on the statement made by the IMF saying that we're doing well. We have to ask ourselves, what kind of information are they using to determine whether we are doing well or not? With the current review at the staff level, the reference point was last year. If last year your inflation was hovering around 54%, and now you are doing inflation around 26%, obviously, it's a signal that numerically you are doing well. And so IMF, looking at information available to them and the reference point that they have, they will say that, yes, indeed, we are doing well. But at our individual level or our own economy, we don't feel that kind of economic, improvement that they're talking about.
And why is that so?
Yes, clearly, if you put the numbers in place, if inflation is around 54%, and now it turns out to be 26%, it does not mean that prices are not going up, but the rate at which prices are increasing is what has slowed down. Let's take 100 cities as a base mark, and for instance, you have 100 cities that you anticipate to purchase an item going forward next year. An item price 100 cities. If inflation catches up with it and it's 54%, that item the price will increase to 154. And if it turns out that 154, you have inflation around 33%, then 33% of the 154 is about 51%, 51 cities. If you add it to the 154, that's about 200 and something. And so an item that is 100 cities, based on these two inflation numbers, which the Ghanaian inflation has gone through all these numbers, is now, the price has now doubled. So effectively, it tells you that there's a price increase, but then the increment has slowed down. That is why, we are not feeling it in our pocket. And then the expectations in inflation as well. But expectations obviously depends on how the city performs. And we all know, if the city does not perform well, the pass-through effect through the corridors of transportation and all those tends to increase prices. And so there's that kind of anticipation that the forex, is not going to do well. And as a result of that, the realization of this inflation going forward is a true, increase in prices on the market.
Ultimately, we are looking at seeing an economic recovery after these spring meetings, and I'm wondering whether anything good can come out of Nazareth, if I'm supposed to borrow the words.
Yeah, for now, I think if we've seen any economic recovery, we have to be careful, and then also we don't have to hold our chest out in a sense that we have suspended our debt payment. And you see, when you suspend external debt payment, it's more or less like fixing your exchange rate. It shows that you have fixed the exchange rate. So the true level of demand that will trigger, prices, it's not what we are seeing now. So if anybody is talking about exchange rate, inflation numbers, all those economic indicators, we have to be careful because the frog is not dead yet. We have to wait to get the frog dead, and then we'll see the true light. That is, if you look at the agents who are demanding, the dollars, we're talking about the government, talking about individuals, talking about businesses. The businesses are doing their part, which is the recent, hikes that we saw in the exchange rate, which is the seasonal demand, that we saw in the first quarter. But trust me, government is not on the market. If government finishes all these negotiations, even though our external debt service is going to go down, there will still be demand on the market as far as the government's activities are concerned. And so that is when we'll get to know the true level of the city. And for now, what we're seeing is more or less a quasi kind of stability.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Lord Mensah. We are indeed grateful for your thoughts this afternoon. Now, let's stay a while longer in Washington, D.C., because Development Bank Ghana has indicated that it is working to advance 1 billion cedis through commercial banks before the close of this year. This will be advanced to some sectors of the economy, with Agric taking about a quarter of this lending. Now, this move is part of efforts to aid Ghana's economic recovery. Kwamina Duka is chief executive of the bank and has been speaking to Joy Business in Washington, D.C.
I think to date we've lent nearly a billion cedis already in our short time, and then also trying to change behaviors, because one of the strengths of a development bank, with our links into government, our links into business, and our links into the private sector, is that we're a super connector, we're a super convener. And so it's trying to change behavior and begin to get all those three parties to work together in a very collaborative sense. And in that respect, the work that we do as a collaborator and as a catalyst for changing behavior is one of the key aspects of a development bank. Yeah.
You talked about support. So since when you started operations, you've advanced about $1 billion Ghana cedis or $1 billion to the respective institutions.
Billion cedis. It's a billion cedis at the moment, and by this time next year we would have doubled that. And And if we continue on this track, we'll be the largest lender in the country. But more importantly than the actual numbers that we lend is the impact. And for us, it's so important that we're not lending just for lending's sake, right? It's lending with purpose. It's profits with purpose. And we support financial sustainability, bankable deals, and at the same time, making sure that we provide the liquidity to our partner financial institutions to be able to help change this economy. Thank you.
You talked about doubling this financing to about $1 billion Ghana cedis by the close of, that is this year or next year, sorry for that one.
We work under very difficult conditions. As you quite rightly said, the economy is tough at the moment, but we're determined and we're looking to disburse as quickly as possible. And yes, you're right. We're hoping that by the end of this year, with all the constraints, we're working together, partner financial institutions, would have gone from $1 billion to maybe just under $2 billion by the end of this year.
And help me out in terms of the broader areas that you're looking at and the beneficiaries. I know development banks deal with institutions, financial institutions, and not the direct day-to-day. So help me out. What are the prime focus areas for the development bank going forward to this year, and in terms of this funding that you're going to roll out?
Well, our mandate is to work particularly into 4 sectors: agriculture, manufacturing, ICT, and what we call high value. But the truth of the matter is our focus is primarily on agriculture. And in that respect, we're working very closely with GERSL as our partners, as both our knowledge and technical partners, to ensure that we're really making a difference in the agricultural sector.
This is still Business Life with me, Pius Kojobaka. More for you after this break. Hello, welcome back to Business Life. The Ghana Statistical Service has launched its Food Variation Across Regions report, which shows the various changes in prices of some selected food items. The research, which was conducted from January 2023 to February 2024, showed substantial variation in prices of food within and across the regions. There is more in this report.
The report said, based on the 10 food items, our food region topped in the average ranking in terms of median prices for February prices for February 2024. It further revealed that price variations within regions is larger than price variations across regions. Data scientist Simon Onelma called for a collective effort to address food inflation.
And the question as to whether we've made a comparison of results over the period. And if you remember, the first food price variability we released was released in June using May prices of 2023. And this one we are using February prices. Now, we are only looking at a trend if it has to do with from 2022 to 2024. But if you want to focus on the median price of the 10 items across the 16 regions, the reference period is February 2024 prices. So what we can only do is to proceed and do a comparison of the prices in February 2024 to May 2023, where we did the first release of the price variability report, to see if there has been a progress. And yes, for this report, that hasn't been done. So we're trying to see the situation as at now, so we can go ahead, and other researchers may want to do that comparative stuff.
The Ghana Statistical Service also in the report said changes in price of imported food items is more than twice that of locally produced food items. James Eshen's report for Joy Business.
All right, so let's interrogate these report further. Let's go and zoom and engage data scientists at the Ghana Statistical Service, Simon Onilma, for more. Simon, thanks so much for agreeing to speak to us on Business Live. First off, I'm wondering, how different is this report from the usual inflation figures we know?
Thank you very much, and good evening to your cherished viewers. I'm grateful to be on your platform. This report, as rightly indicated, investigated variability in prices or variations in prices of some selected food items across regions in Ghana. And specifically, we used 10 food items as contained in the inflation basket. And basically, all we're doing was to investigate how unit prices. In this case, we aggregated these prices at the regional level and trying to observe and see how these aggregated prices vary across regions. And this is strictly different from inflation, which tries to do a comparison to a base year and then trying to see the rate at which prices are changing. This is basically a comparison of prices across regions, and it is not about inflation.
All right, so what are the main findings of the report?
Okay, so basically, we used 10 food items as I already indicated, and what we did was to institute a selection criteria for the food items that are being used. So, GSS collects data on prices monthly, which is used for the computation of CPI. So we wanted to do a bit more work in terms of how we're going to use this data and coming up with some findings that relate mostly to prices. And the focus is on food because of the quest to achieving the second goal of SDG of ending hunger. So we instituted a selection criteria, as I already indicated, that before a food item was selected to be a part of this analysis, the weight of the food item in the inflation basket should be ranked among the top 50. So of the 307 items we have in the inflation basket, 103 of them are food items. So we wanted to see how prices of these food items vary across regions. So the selection, as I indicated, yes, your weight should be ranked in the top 50. And the second thing is that the items should have a standardized unit of measure. Either it is measured in a kilogram or in a liter. And the next condition is that this item we are selecting should have at least 10 price points in at least 10 regions. So when we did the selection, we had items like yam, imported rice, cooking oil, hydrated salt, bread, milk coming up in the list, making up of an item of about 10 items which we used for the analysis. And basically what we realized was that of the 10 items, our region was ranked highest in terms of the median price for these particular identified food items. So our region was ranked highest in beef, in bread, and in tomato paste, for instance. So basically we are saying that if you are doing a comparative of prices of food items which we have used in this particular report, our region is ranked 3 times as the highest, having the highest median price. We also observed that, yes, if you compare an aggregated percentage change in food prices which are imported to those that are locally produced, we found out that the percentage change in imported food items is more than twice what is observed for the locally produced goods. So basically, again, we are saying that if you
go ahead
within region, okay, so if you look at the price variability within a particular region, and within a region in the sense that our unit of analysis here has to do with price point for these items that are collected from the various outlets in markets that are used for the computation of CPI. So basically all we did was to do a comparative analysis of the various price points within the region and see how these price points vary within the region. And the within region variation of these items are higher compared to the across region. So across region in the sense that if I pick a median price in a region, Now compare that to another region, the variability across these regions tend to be lower than if I want to pick different price points within the same region. So these are some key.
And I want to know quickly, because we are running out of time, what really is the reason for this hikes you are seeing in the Ahafo region you mentioned?
Okay, so that would be very difficult to easily mention now, because a lot of investigation will still have to be done. As I indicated, these are just 10 food items, of which Ahafo is topping in 3 of them. So we may want to investigate. Does it have to do with availability? Does it have to do with transportation cost and all that? So these are things that further researchers can pick it up and then begin to invest, figure out what exactly could be the cause of this.
In any minute, how would this report help shape a national policy?
Okay, so a lot has been done in the past when it has to do with food and food availability and its prices. And currently, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture has launched the second phase of the Planting for Food and Jobs. So their aim is to ensure that food is readily available, and by the basic principles of demand and supply, the higher the supply and the market prices are likely to be low. So we are hoping that we'll continue to do enough, and all policies that are being implemented to shape and then manage food prices in Ghana see the food of the day. Then at the end, we'll be able to achieve food security and better nutrition.
Simon Onioma, thank you so much. Data scientist with the Ghana Statistical Service, speaking to us there. Grateful to have you on. And that's it for the bulletin. I am Pius Kojobaka. For more stories, do log on to myjoyonline.com/business. Always a delight serving you. Do enjoy the rest of our programs. Bye.